Reason number 69 why hydrogen-powered vehicles will never catch on: they literally explode. Plus, Tesla is completely upending the German auto manufacturing world. And on a personal note, we have floods. So this episode is a song of flood and fire. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So first of all, I apologize because you probably are going to be hearing a lot of loud noises. There are huge industrial dehumidifiers running right next door to me, and you can see a few things scattered around. Literally, I'm going to throw up a picture of what this room looks like right now. Pretty much everything outside of where I am is a complete junk pile. This room is going to be completely trashed. The whole downstairs has to be refloored. We had a sewage leak. It was completely gross. We spent all day yesterday cleaning it up. But I wanted to get out a video, and honestly, I thought with the hydrogen explosion thing, it was such a nice tie-in with flooding and fire. I was like, why not just do that and go for the full insurance thing? So anyway, I don't know exactly where I'm going to be. I think I'm going to move into a small bedroom area and try to set up whatever I can for the next month or two, for however long this whole thing happens. But say goodbye to this room. Say goodbye to the yellow surfboard for a while. I'm sad about that, of course. Super sad that I have to be moving, and it's very, very complicated to get all this stuff to happen. But we'll make do, and I will keep making videos for you all. So turning from flood to fire, let's read this from the Bakersfield Californian, dated a couple of days ago. Explosions fire at hydrogen fueling station to destroy $1.1 million GET bus. So Bakersfield, California is sort of south central California, that sort of area. At least that's relatively close. My geography might be off slightly. It's a big, big state. But anyway, as you see from this picture here, last November, they cut the ribbon at a new hydrogen fueling station, and they spent $11 million, I believe that was about the amount, for 10 hydrogen power buses to convert their city, part of their city, into green energy. Now, number one reason why hydrogen is never going to take over from electric is because of convenience, but number two is because it's not actually green, people. Most of how hydrogen is made is from fossil fuels, in particular natural gas, and it's a heating process. A lot of energy is put in, and you split off the hydrogen, and you get hydrogen, and you also get other products that are actually usable. I think methane is one of the other ones. I haven't looked into this for a while, but anyway, it's a huge energy intensive process, and it's far, far more wasteful than just charging up a battery. So hydrogen is just not that practical. But in addition to that, the transport and storage and use of hydrogen in a vehicle is very, very scary. It's terrifying. I mean, look at the Hindenburg. The Hindenburg was filled with hydrogen, and that thing just went up, right? And at least there was a valid reason for having hydrogen in that, because of course it made it lighter than air so it could float. But with these vehicles, it actually makes them even heavier, because you have to have an overwrapped pressure vessel. You have to have something like a scuba tank, or probably like maybe 2 or 3 times the size of a scuba tank, and it has to be under very, very high pressure, the hydrogen, or else, because hydrogen is a very, very light gas, and if it's at, room atmospheric pressure, it will take up a lot of room, which is the reason why a hydrogen balloon floats in the air instead of, sinking to the ground. It's super, super light. And so in order to utilize hydrogen, what you have to do is you have to pressurize it a great deal. So a fueling station is not just like filling up your gas tank where you just kind of push the thing and there's a small pump and it pumps it out at basically atmospheric pressure. This is pushing this into these tanks at about 100 or 200 bar or more to fill it with enough hydrogen that you can then utilize it for a long period of time and drive a long distance, converting that hydrogen, ironically, back into electricity using a fuel cell normally, and then driving electric motors. So it's just a completely nonsensical way to go. The argument is that hydrogen has a higher energy density than batteries do, but the problem is that when you have to add on all of these very, very heavy pressure vessels, and you have to add on the infrastructure complexity and all of that kind of stuff, it just makes it not a very good solution for even up to light trucks and transport vehicles like buses and stuff. But of course, as I mentioned earlier about the Hindenburg, one of the biggest problems with hydrogen is it's incredibly flammable. And if you want a little bit more recent example than the Hindenburg, which I'm sure was before most of our lifetimes, many of us were alive during the time when the Challenger exploded. And of course, the original cause of that was an O-ring leak in the solid rocket motor booster, but that impacted the hydrogen fuel tank that the shuttle sat next to. It pierced it, and then of course, boom, we had the giant explosion. So hydrogen was involved in that as well. So many, many disasters over the decades have had to do with hydrogen because it's a very, very unsafe thing to transport around. And so let's turn to this article, and while I read this, I'll show a little bit of video that was recorded and placed on YouTube. Of course, I will put a link to both of these in the description so you can check that out. Kern County's first hydrogen fueling station caught fire early Tuesday as explosions rocked Golden Empire Transit District's new $3 million plus bus filling facility northwest of Golden State Avenue and F Street. A portion of Golden State was closed while Bakersfield Fire Department personnel dispatched to the site at 1:15 a.m. battled the fire. A $1.1 million hydrogen bus was destroyed along with part of the filling station. GET said in a news release buses were being fueled at the time of the fire. Explosions were heard and seen from the tanks on the bus that had just been filled, but the primary tanks of the actual fueling station did not ignite due to safety technology, it stated. And by the way, thank goodness that didn't happen, because those are far bigger than the ones that are on the bus. That would have been a really big explosion in that case. Quote, "The situation this morning could have been worse, but with the functioning safety mechanisms in place and the swift action of the Bakersfield Fire Department, minimized damage and no injuries were reported." CEO Karen King said it was too early to speculate what went wrong. GET has purchased 10 hydrogen-powered buses as it works to meet state requirements that all new public transportation in the state be emissions-free by 2040. In November, it opened the hydrogen station at its headquarters at 1830 Golden State Avenue. The station produces so-called blue hydrogen from natural gas piped to the site. So let's just look at those last two paragraphs again. Number one, state requirements that transportation be emission-free, and yet how is hydrogen produced? Right in the next paragraph, from natural gas. Natural gas is a fossil fuel. It is not emission-free. The production of hydrogen is not emission-free. So this is just kind of a boondoggle. Yes, indeed, the buses themselves are only probably producing water vapor out of them as they drive, but the process of making the hydrogen is very, very fossil fuel intensive and energy intensive. And then of course we can add on top of that that any small spark or mistake in the fueling process can lead to a literal explosion. Fortunately, it doesn't appear that anyone was hurt or injured or killed in this case, so that's actually a really, really good thing. But if the main tanks had gone up during this process, that could have been really, really disastrous. And because I'm sure there are people already screaming in the comments with their fingers and stuff, yes, battery electric vehicles can catch fire, and yes, when they do catch fire, it's a thermal runaway situation, and it can be very, very difficult to put out. But batteries are much smaller than hydrogen, in terms of the scope of this. Even if it's something like a bus or something, the bus doesn't have to be right next to these electric tanks, right? There's like a charger, but there's just a cable to that charger. And if something bad happened and it went up in flames, yes, it would be locally very bad, but it's not going to have the potential. It won't explode. It will burn, but it won't explode. And of course, the better the batteries are, the more newer technology that's involved, especially things like LFP batteries and such, they have a much lower incidence of catching fire than the older NMC batteries, or nickel manganese cobalt, which is the kind that our Model Y has. So our Model 3 has LFP batteries, and those really don't like to catch fire. It's very difficult to get them to catch fire. And of course, in a Tesla and any other reputable EV, you're going to have mitigation strategies where if one cell, because these are many, many, many cells, it's like little batteries, right? If one of those catches, it will tend to vent out to the bottom or some place that will cause it to, thermally run away, just that one cell, but it won't cause many to do that. And even in the case of very, very bad accidents, battery packs, generally speaking, do not catch fire. It does happen, but gas cars catch fire 11 times more frequently than battery electric vehicles. And that ratio is improving for battery electric vehicles because the chemistry in them is getting better and better, and they're becoming less and less flammable. So it is possible for BEVs to catch fire. If and when they do, it's a very bad thing because it's really hard to put it out. But if you get a reputable vehicle like a Tesla or something, it's very difficult to make those catch fire, as opposed to hydrogen that just always wants to catch fire. It's literally like it's just waiting to catch fire. It can't wait to do that. And yeah, if everything else was equal and hydrogen was just more flammable or something, then maybe you could take mitigating steps. But the fact that there is no infrastructure for hydrogen refueling, the process of making hydrogen is incredibly fossil fuel intensive and energy intensive, and it's less efficient in the well to wheel, essentially digging up the natural gas out of the ground to the point where you're actually driving the wheels. It's way, way, way less efficient than just charging a battery from the grid, even if you're using coal to charge the battery. But of course, you can charge a battery using solar power or something too. So battery electric vehicles, there's no question that they are the better solution at this point. And this explosion is just another example of how uncompetitive hydrogen is for passenger and group transportation situations. And finally, let's look at this article from Yahoo Finance. And this is really interesting because I consider Yahoo kind of mainstream media at this point, but the The title is Tesla is lapping Germany's automakers in the global EV race. And I was like, ouch, that is a brutal title. But of course, if you're feeling bad, you can just look at this great picture of Elon Musk dancing at Giga Berlin. So that should make you happy, right? Before we read the article, let's go ahead and look at this graph. This is EV rankings by brand, so not individual vehicles, but by brand. And that's actually pretty amazing. We'll talk about that in just a second. But you can see here that Tesla is beating VW out by a little bit, Mercedes by about double, and then Audi and BMW by even more than that. And of course, what's scary here is that VW in particular is a huge group. It has Audi, it has Porsche inside, it has a lot of different companies that are making EVs, and still Tesla, that only has 4 vehicles on the market at this point, is outselling that entire group in Germany. And this, of course, is part of the reason that people at VW are saying that the roof is on fire. And if you haven't seen that video, you can check that out right up here. And then if we look at this graph of global deliveries for the first half of 2023, the situation is even more stark, like way more stark. So you can see Tesla in red, and then VW and BMW and Mercedes all together are maybe 60%, 60, 65%, something like that. They look like they're less than 2/3 of what Tesla is selling all by itself. So this is a dire situation for other German automakers. And I say other because, of course, Tesla is a German automaker now because they have a factory in Berlin. So they are making vehicles out of Germany to sell to the European market in particular. Now, yes, of course, Tesla's headquarters are in the United States, but I would call them a pretty reasonably German auto manufacturer if they're making these vehicles in Germany. But regardless, VW, BMW, and Mercedes, which are the top 3 considered German vehicles, all 3 of them are struggling mightily when it compares to Tesla. So reading on, Germany's automakers announced bold plans the last several years to shift to electric cars and challenge Tesla Incorporated's dominance. Instead, they're only falling further behind. And this, of course, if you've been paying attention to the news for the last several years, they're all like, oh yeah, by 2020 something, we're going to catch and pass Tesla. Well, this graph above does not make it look like they're catching Tesla anytime soon. In fact, they're clearly going the opposite direction and falling further and further behind. Turning to the article, Tesla delivered almost 890,000 cars in the first half of this year, more EVs than Volkswagen AG, BMW AG, Mercedes-Benz Group AG, and Porsche AG combined. The Germans are struggling as software issues delay key models and contribute to waning sales in China. That's really bad. Their biggest market, where Tesla and local champion BYD have raced ahead. They're even playing second fiddle on their home market, where Tesla remains the top EV brand. Investors will hear from 3 of the German companies this week, with Porsche reporting quarterly earnings Wednesday, followed by Mercedes and VW on Thursday. As Tesla pushes for more volume with aggressive price cuts, it's dialing up the pressure on legacy manufacturers that are struggling to keep pace. Tesla's EV sales increased 30 percentage points more than VW's in the 3 months that ended in June, widening its lead. So again, rather than shrinking the lead, VW is actually losing ground further and further. So if you start a race behind somebody, you better darn well hope that you run faster than that person, because if you start behind and you run slower than that person, they're going to win the race. And clearly at this point, Tesla not only is ahead, but they're running faster, so they're just increasing their lead over time. While the Germans are mired in difficult talks with unions about retooling their combustion-era production sites, Tesla plans to expand its German factory and is preparing to build a new plant in Mexico. Quote, Tesla is still miles ahead of the German car makers in all their major markets, said Matthias Schmidt, an auto analyst based near Hamburg. They're under pressure to boost volumes to reach the kind of economies of scale needed to make EVs profitable, end quote. Tesla shares, which have more than doubled this year, declined before the start of U.S. trading on Monday after UBS cut its rating on the stock to the equivalent of hold. So we can pretty much ignore that last paragraph. That's just noise in the signal at this point. Ever since their earnings report last week, Tesla's been on a downturn. It just always happens. Buy on the rumors, sell on the news. Anyway, that's just short-term kind of stuff. Longer term, what we're looking at here is that Tesla is not only keeping its lead ahead of these huge brands, they're actually lengthening the lead and getting further and further ahead. And Europe is converting to EVs very rapidly, which means that these other companies are losing actual ICE sales. And those sales plus the EV sales that they're not making are being cannibalized, particularly by Tesla, but also, Chinese brands are starting to come in as well. So this is really bad news for these companies, and one hopes that they will figure out a way out of this, but I don't think there really is an easy way out. So for the other German auto manufacturers whose name is not Tesla, this is going to be a very rough few years. In the meantime, if you hear anybody touting the benefits of doing hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and such, you can point to this video and to these articles and to the video of the explosion to show people that that is not indeed the case. Hydrogen is not the better solution, and it's also incredibly dangerous, much more dangerous than batteries are. And finally, thank you in advance for any good thoughts about this whole situation with the flooding and stuff. It's not like cancer and car accidents and things like that haven't been bad enough. We can throw flooding a half of our house into the mix as well. It's been quite the summer. I'm actually hoping for school to start up again because I'm hoping that the bad stuff will stop happening then. It will just be like compressed into the summer. Anyway, next week I will be traveling to see my mom because she's getting a second round of chemotherapy and it's my turn to be with her for a while. So I will be recording someplace the rest of this week in the house, and then I will be recording at her house next week as I am there to help her with chemotherapy. And then who knows, in a month, 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that, hopefully I will be back here eventually and all this stuff will be set up. By the way, all this stuff is damaged back here, all of the furniture and everything, not the knickknacks and all that, but the furniture itself is all warped and everything from the flooding. So you can't see that back there, but it's bad. So anyway, it super sucks. And thank you so much for the good thoughts and everything. And of course, if you want to be nice, you can go ahead and like this video because that's a nice thing to do. And you could consider subscribing if you haven't done that yet. I'm up above 63,000 subscribers, and I would really actually love to get to 100,000 one day. I know it's kind of a stupid thing, but I actually really want the little YouTube play button plaque, and that's what you get at 100,000. So anyway, if you want to help me out with that, that would be a lovely gesture. As always, a huge shout out to my Patreon patrons, my YouTube channel members, and now my X subscribers. It's not Twitter anymore. So I did a video about that, changing yesterday. Now it is officially X. So I guess it's my X subscribers. I'll try to get the new logo and put that up here instead of the Twitter bird. I just think that's pretty cool. It's crazy that they made that change, but yeah, we're going to be Xing now, or Twixing. Scott Walter posted a picture of a Twix bar and he said, yeah, we're going to be Twixing from now on. So I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So anyway, thank you to my X subscribers as well. And please Twix at me. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a new Tesla, a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.